Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so thrilled to have a very special guest with us today, Nate Dunn. We're going to be diving into his experiences within the troubled teen industry. And I know you're going to find this conversation very interesting and inspiring, as do we. So without further ado, let's welcome Nate. Hi, Nate.
Hi.
How
Hi.
are you?
I am doing great. Great.
Good.
That is
Yes.
so good to get to have you on our podcast. I feel like this is quite a few months in the making here, and I just
Yes.
love that you're willing to. This is going to be your first podcast,
Very,
right?
yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
exciting.
This is actually going to be the first time I've ever really shared a lot of this stuff outside of my family. So this is a big
Mm.
step for me.
So to get started, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Nathan Dunn. I was born in a little town in Ohio. When I was two, my parents got divorced and my mom remarried and we moved to East Detroit. Warren, really, but East Detroit was where everything was at that we would go to. And yeah, that's basically my trauma started very early in my life. Number one, my parents divorcing. Even though I was only two, I believe it or not, I can remember things from then. And I don't know how or why, but there's just things I remember from that. And I know that was very hard for me, even as I got older, because every kid, especially boy, they want their dad. You know what I'm saying? When they're young, that was hard for me. And I East Detroit in the late '80s, early '90s was a rough place to live. And my mom worked two jobs, and my stepdad would go to work, and he would stay there for weeks at a time. Sometimes he'd sleep in his office, and because he worked in Southfield, which was a pretty far drive. I had two older brothers and two younger sisters, and my brothers were pretty much basically in charge, which they were only a few years older than me. We would run amok, you know what I'm saying? We would pretty much do whatever we wanted, run around the neighborhood. We had friends in the neighborhood. We were right behind my house was a park, a school, a park, and there was a soccer game going on that day. I got dared to go and spit on somebody by my friends and my brothers. So I went and I did it, and I spit on this guy, and I believe I called him like a bald-headed chicken fucker or something like that. Is what the news, Channel 7 news said. I
Oh
said,
my
which I don't
gosh,
remember because it's,
news.
yeah, they said he called him a bald-headed blankety blank is what they said on the news. So, you know what I mean? I don't remember because I blocked that out for so many years that I am still remembering things from it because it was very traumatic. So I turn around and I run back to my brothers and friends standing in a group over by some bleachers, and I looked back while I was running, and this guy's chasing me, a full grown man. I'm 7 years old and he's chasing me down. Now mind you, there is hundreds of people at this park. So my brothers, they tried to stop him getting away. He threw him out of the way, and I tripped and fell, and he picked me up, threw me over his shoulder, and carried me to his car. And he kidnapped me. I guess it was his dad or something, an older man than him, got in the car with him. And all I can remember is I looked out the back window as we were driving away, and I could see my brothers and friends chasing the car down, like running after the car. So I tried to unlock the back door, which, if you remember right back in them days, the car locks, you know how you would pull it up, it would make this noise. It was those long, yeah. So every time I tried it, it would make a noise, and the older guy in the passenger seat would reach back and smack me or backhand me or whatever, and it was knocking me out. So I was dizzy, and when I would wake back up, I would try it again. I tried to get out of the car, and this happened several times, and that they would hit me or smack me and knock me dizzy or knock me all the way out. And yeah, they took me to behind an abandoned building, and
did some bad things. You don't have to
And
share.
yes,
Me,
It's okay.
I hate that happened
Mhm.
to you. The
pineapple,
Yeah.
pineapple. No. So yeah, they pulled my pants down and was messing with me, and
bastards.
Mm. And you were 7 at the
I've never told anybody that. I've never even told my mom that, but because I knew it would hurt her.
Yeah.
But so,
Did the police
anyways,
ever know what happened or
yeah, my,
like
my
the cops
brothers
ever
ran
get there?
back home. They had, after they realized that I was gone, they ran back home and they told my mom. She called the police and they had a search crew. They were developing a search crew to look for me. They had helicopters out. They had officers everywhere, up and down through the park, through the street that I lived on, which was literally right in front of the park that we were at. So it wasn't far from the park. After they got done messing with me or whatever, they took me in there. I remember them saying, trying to figure out what they were going to do with me.
Mm,
And they were like discussing back and forth. By that time, I was so scared, I didn't even try to get out anymore. I was terrified. And
yeah.
somehow, some way, I don't know, but he drove down the street that I lived on, and yeah, it was full of police lights lit up. You could literally see the helicopter flying up with the spotlight out because by this time it was dark out. And all I remember is I looked up and I seen my neighbor's house, and then I seen a bunch of people standing out around neighbors and cops. So I jumped up on my knees and I just pounded on the back window, and my mom seen me and she ran and told the officers and they got me out of the car. That's how it started. So immediately after that I was rebellious and
Sure.
I didn't know why that happened to me. It was so confusing to me. You know what I'm saying, at that age.
It's terrible. You did not deserve that. Any part of it, no matter whether you
Mhm.
spit on him or not. Like, what horrible men that they did that to you. I
And
mean,
they ended up getting out of the charges because, and call this is crazy, but they told my mom that in the state of Michigan it's illegal to spit on somebody.
no, that's such shit.
They,
So they
yeah.
can kidnap you, but if you spit on them, then they don't get charged. Like that does
I
that's
never one time ever talked to a police officer with just with me at all, with me or my parents or anybody. No, a police officer never asked me any questions. They never talked to me. They never asked me any questions about what happened. Nothing. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's what the verdict was, is that they told my parents that it's illegal to spit on somebody and that he told them he was taking me to the police department and trying to file charges on me. But
wow.
yeah,
And they believed that guy.
yeah. So that was another thing, which at that age I didn't know what that was, anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just overheard my parents talking about it.
I hate that happened to you. And like the justice was
Mhm.
not served. And
Mhm.
you're
Yeah, it
blamed
was,
for what happened. Oh my goodness. It's no wonder that you reacted after that.
yeah.
It's absolutely understandable. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was scared to go outside. I was developing mental issues that I had no idea again at this time why this was happening to me, and I didn't like to go outside a lot. So I finally got enough balls up to go outside, and my neighbor's house, I was riding my bike, and my neighbor's house was getting robbed. I was young. I didn't know what that was. I seen the broken window. I seen the guy loading his car up with TVs and stuff like that. And but I just sat there and watched him in the street on my bike, just watching him. And the only thing I could remember was the guy looked like Beetlejuice. And that's all I could remember about the guy. And after my neighbors came home, they found out they had been broken up and robbed and stuff. And they was asking around. And I had told my parents. So my mom had told the guy that lived there, what I said I seen. So the detectives come and talk to me or whatever, and they bring this book was thick of mugshots, and the mugshots were so small. And my mom kept thinking, "There's no way he's gonna be able to do that." You know what I mean? We were like, "At least just give him a shot, just a look. If nothing, it's not. Oh, we tried."
Yeah.
So I start flipping through, and it was about the third page in. Man, when I seen the guy, I knew it was him. I don't know how, I just knew it was him. I pointed to his picture, and I already had the guy on file for priors and stuff. So they went to where his last known address was, and they searched it, and they found a little boy there that he had kidnapped.
Mm.
And they had found belongings from other children, that missing children in the area from prior missing cases and stuff. And they found their belongings in his house. They found the belongings from my neighbor's house there. So I was just like, what is this world I'm living in? You know what I'm saying? What is this? And I started rebellion, and I started running around with the wrong crowd by the time I got to be 11, 12 years old, running with up on 8 Mile Road, just running with the various worst people you could probably ever want your kid around. So my grandparents at this point, they'd had enough of it. So my grandpa sold his favorite Corvette and he bought a house back in Ohio and moved us back to where they lived in Ohio. So as soon as I get back to Ohio and I go to school, I got into a fight at school and I brought a knife to school. They kicked me out of school. And I was so used to living the way I was living there. And this is a small hick town in Ohio. And I was trying to live the same kind of way I was there. And the law noticed me. I got charged with all kinds of different things just at a young age, kicked out of school. So my parents started looking into boarding schools. They found one in Richmond, Indiana. It was called New Creations. If I ever had to send my kid to a place like that, would be the place that I would send them. That place was everything that they said it was. It was nothing like what I experienced later on. It was very structured, and there wasn't any abuse going on or nothing like that. It was a Christian school, Assemblies of God or something like that. Church owned it, and they had a humongous school system, and they had a school system for the community that the community even went to, and it was nice, but I was still rebellious. You know what I mean? I'm going to be the first to admit to you, I needed to be placed somewhere. I really did. My parents had tried Charter Beacon. They tried all these different places. They had me on Ritalin. They wanted to keep putting me on all these new medicines. And that wasn't working for me either. So I ran away with one of my buddies in there, and we got caught. And the next day, my mom and dad was on vacation. So my grandparents came and picked me up because they kicked me out, and they said they no longer wanted me there. So they kicked me out, and my parents started looking into a little more rougher places further away from home that maybe I wouldn't be able to get away with that kind of behavior at. So they found a place in Mississippi that was called Victory Ranch. It was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I was there for about 6 months. And when I got there, this was more like the type of boys that were there were more like the boys that I remember from I grew up with in Detroit. And I was young. I think I was 12 or 13. I think I was 12 at that time. I was maybe just about to turn 13. And a lot of those kids were older, 16, 17, 18, some of them getting ready to go home. And they were very abusive. They wanted to wreck all day long. They just wanted to mess with the other boys in there. And the staff had their little crew that they had, like, supposedly in charge of the dorm, because you never hardly ever seen them, any staff there all day long. You wouldn't see any staff. It was just the kids that were running the kids. And they would, if you would go to use the bathroom, wherever, they would go and dump buckets of dirty mop water on you while you were sitting on the toilet, or they would beat you up, jump you. And they would always say, don't hit them in the face. They would always just hit you all over in your
Cover it
body.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't cover up your face if your face is bruised and
Yeah.
got scratches and stuff on it. Who were the people who were like heading up that particular location?
I would have to ask my mom that, because I didn't. The only thing I remember is the guy who ran it, that owned it, his name was Brother Dan. That's all they called him, was Brother Dan. And then his son, which his name I think was either Little Dan or Dana or something like that. There were two apartments in the place. One was in the back and one was in the front. His wife lived with one, and the son and his wife and kids lived in the front one.
And how old were
And in the
you when you
middle
went
was the
there?
dorm. I was 12.
Okay, you were 12. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, do we know if this is like a lesser roll-off, spin-off facility?
No,
Victory Ranch sounds familiar.
but he was tied in with Herman Fountain. I do know
Right.
that.
Okay. Yeah.
I do know that because I'm sitting here watching because the state come in and obviously they shut the place down. They came in and it was 2 days later. They didn't take us out of there though. They told them that they had a month to get everybody out of there and it shut down. They didn't come and remove us though. They just said you need to contact their families and they need to come and get them. So my family's contacted and of course they told my mom and dad that there's no way I was ready to go home. I was causing all these problems in there. And honestly, the only thing I did was go and try to get help a few times. That's all I did. And I got in trouble for it. I had to run laps all day long around this pond for hours and hours in the Mississippi humidity heat. And I wasn't used to that. And I just remember every time I'd stop, he would pull up on this little golf cart and kick me until I got up and make me keep running all day for trying to get help. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just trying to get help.
So, what I find so interesting about that, and what I want the listeners to understand, is that when you say you ran laps all day, it really literally
Oh
was.
yeah, it was till the sun came down.
And that's
Yeah.
what I think people don't understand,
No, they did give me water, but there was no food.
because they had to keep you alive somehow.
Right.
The
Yeah.
water, the bare minimum.
Mhm.
And I think listeners need to understand is that people tend to think when you say that stuff, they're like, oh no, it really couldn't mean the whole day that he ran.
No, yeah,
But
it
it
was.
really was. Yes. And I
Yeah,
think that's important to know, especially as you talk about later with Bethel and the stuff that happened there, where people need to set aside their preconceived notions about how kids are treated normally and should be. They should be taken care of and not have stuff like that happen. But that this is not the world of kind people, adults who take care of kids. This is a time and a place and locations where kids are mistreated for, like you said, for getting help. Like the adults are not good people. And
Mm-mm.
oh man, I hate that you went through that. And I love that you're willing to share this stuff because, and I want you to know that you were always like so respected and believed and cared for the stuff that you went through here. And I hope that we're going to build up the listeners to understand that too, that when you're talking about this stuff, like it was all day of a run and then he
it
would kick
was.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I just hate that for you. So continue, but I just, gosh, Nate, I feel like so many adults just let you down.
It was just, it felt to me in my eyes like it was just one thing after another. And that's just what life is. This is what life is supposed to be. You know what I mean? And it almost got to normalized for me. Like it was crazy that I could sit there and watch somebody literally get whooped with a stick from their ankles all the way up to their back 15, 20 times and bleeding and everything else. And it was normal. This is normal for me. It's just insane how the young mind works. You know what I mean? Developing, especially at that age. So, yeah, there's just bad people in this world. That's just all there is to it. And there still is bad people in this world, and it's still going on, which is the craziest thing to me that we're at 2024. I was there almost 30 years ago, and it's still going on. Like that's just amazing to me that people are still getting away with this. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
So you went from Victory Ranch to Bethel at that point
Yeah.
after it shut down. Is that how you
Mhm.
transitioned over to Bethel?
Yeah, they called. My mom called them, and they told her I wasn't ready, and they said that there's a place just right there in Mississippi, very
Mm.
close, that's still open that they could try to see if they could get me in there. And obviously they did. The night before I left, my parents had drove all the way from Ohio to drive me to jail. And the night before I left, Herman Fountain and his son Bubba Fountain and his son Josh Fountain, all they came up to see if anything was for sale because that's how it was there. Buddy system. They was trying to see if they had anything for sale, which was me.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what
Oh,
I'm saying? Really, in all reality, because that's the only thing that they did with it. And I never seen them buy anything. All they did is came and talked to me. And I can remember I wasn't from the South. So when I heard their accents and stuff like that, it was intimidating to me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, I'm down here with these hillbillies, like all the way, I'm far from my home here. This is
Yeah.
crazy. This ain't just a state away or nothing. I'm pretty far from home here. And these guys, they all talked weird, and there was just all this, everything was different for me. And my parents come, they picked me up, and I remember sitting in the back seat of that car after just what I thought was abuse at that time wasn't, I had no idea yet what was coming for me. But I was just sitting there thinking, man, I hope these boys at this place aren't as bad as this. And I tried telling my mom and my dad, of course, they're not going to listen to me because I was really out of control. I honestly was at home. I couldn't, there was no way for them to keep me there and then still take care of my brothers and sisters with me acting that way. I understood that. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. And so they drove me to Lucedale, Mississippi. And I'll never forget, we pulled up to the church, the first building right there in the property. We pulled up and they were all there waiting for me already. Herman Fountain and his son and two or three of the boys that were there. I remember they were all sitting in the back of a pickup truck. And as soon as we pulled in, they all jumped out. Every one of them had a big smile on their face, and they greeted my mom and dad, and yes, sir, no, sir, shook their hands. And my parents liked that. They were from the North too. They never really had that either. So they liked that idea. And at this time, the school wasn't military based or nothing like that. It was more work. You work all day, and the way they told my parents was they had this excellent school there and all this stuff, and he's going to get all this good schooling, and he could even graduate right from here if he wanted to, and all this. They had all this brochure and stuff that of our daily routine that we did, and none of it in there, from what I remember seeing, was anything like what it really was. And so they even had me thinking maybe this place isn't like that. Maybe this is better. Maybe this is going to be what I need, or it won't be as hard for me to get by. And I was totally wrong about that. As soon as my parents drove away, everything, it just was like that. It changed immediately. They were up in my face, yelling at me. I'm just this little kid, and here's these 16, 17-year-old boys again. Here I go again. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget the one of the guys that was in the room with me at Victory Ranch, he was going home, and he had wrote all over tagged up. We had these locker boxes from Walmart or whatever that you could buy them, and little cheap locker box things. And he had wrote gang graffiti all over his and stuff like that. And his parents were coming to pick him up, and he was freaking out. I can't let my parents see this and stuff. They're letting me go back home now. I can't let them see this stuff on my box. I ended up giving them mine because mine didn't have any of that on it. So I had this box now that I'm going to Bethel with all this gang stuff I didn't know what the hell it was. You know what I'm saying? It was all this stuff from California and all this stuff on it. I didn't know. And so that's the first thing that happened, because the boys are the ones that went and got my stuff out of my parents' car and put it into the truck. So they must have been, I could hear them whispering and talking about it. I didn't know what they were talking about until then, until I got in the dorm. And immediately I got this humongous Mexican 17-year-old. He was huge. That was a resident there, up in my face asking me all these questions about this gang and that gang. And I don't know. And they thought I was just playing stupid with them or whatever. I got smacked around for that. I got beat up for that a couple different times or whatever until that went away. But
gosh.
so I ended up trying to run away. I tried to run away from there. And that was a
Yeah.
very bad mistake. I
Did you try
ran,
to run by yourself or
I
did you try
did.
to run with somebody else? Okay.
I ran away a couple times. I ran away altogether.
I like that
I
you give
wasn't
up.
going to give up. I was bound and determined to get the hell out of there. I wanted out of there. I didn't like anything about that place whatsoever. The staff was abusive and the boys were abusive. And it was, when I say abusive, abusive. I got caught one time in school because we very rarely did go to school, but when we did go to school, we did the pace work. And you check your own work on there. You go, they had a check station where you go up and you check your work. If you missed anything, you're supposed to go back, sit down, erase it, and redo it, and come back up. I got caught cheating. I would go up with the book and I would act like I was checking my answers, but really I'm getting all the answers out of the answer book and filling it out real quick and turning it in. So I got caught. Now, Herman Fountain's son was the one that ran the school at the time when I was there. So this is he's probably 450, a big boy. They called him Bubba. He was a big boy. And when I went up to turn my book in, I turned my book in and I seen him look at me funny. So I go back, I sit down because when you turn that in, he gives you the next level up book. And I go and I sit down. Next thing you know, he's calling me back up there. And he said, go on out there and pick you a switch. And by that time, I already knew because I seen what happened to other people with it. So I had to go out and I had to pick the stick that they used to beat me with. And I went back and that was the first time I got switched. That was different for me. I wasn't used to that. My parents didn't do that to me.
I still struggle with this anger towards these people that gave my parents another way to physically abuse us with a stick that you pick from your own tree out back. And I hate that you went through that too. There's something so perverse and twisted about you having to be the one to pick it. And then that's the thing that they use to just wail on you.
Yeah. And after that, I ran. I ran because that scared me. That scared me more than anything. And we're talking about deep woods, Mississippi, alligators, snakes, everything out there, coyotes, you name it, is in them woods. And I would rather, at 13 years old, I would rather go out into that in the dark and risk it than to stay at that place. That's how scared I was. That's how uncomfortable I was. That's how I felt. I was terrified to be there, and I'd rather be out there and risk being around all these crazy animals that I wasn't used to either because I was from the north. We don't have rattlesnakes and alligators and stuff up north. Yeah, I didn't make it far though the first time. I ran away. I didn't make it very far. Matter of fact, the second time I ran away, they didn't even do anything to me. The first time I ran away, they did. I remember I got switched all the way up my back, my butt, my legs, and I went to bed that night. And when I got up the next morning, I went to jump. I was on the top rack, and when I jumped down, my sheet was stuck to my back, and I had to have a bunkie peel it off my back because it was stuck all the way down, like with dried blood through it.
Wow.
And the second time I ran away, I didn't make it far. I was literally gone probably 25, 30 minutes. They found me, and they didn't do anything to me that time. I guess they thought, okay, this guy really is serious about running away. If he does get away, what's he going to say? Probably is what I'm thinking they were thinking because they're like, okay, this one might be a little different because the people didn't run away from there. That was a big no no. You didn't try it. You don't try that. If you do, you're in serious shit. That was the worst thing you could possibly do. There
And
were
the
several.
interesting thing is too, the ones that did try to run away and go into town to get help from the townspeople, a lot of them would just call the
Oh
Bethel people and
yes,
have them come pick you guys up. That's
yeah.
the craziest thing.
As
Like the
soon as
people in
they
the town
seen
were all
that,
in cahoots together.
and you stuck out like a sore thumb. This is a very small town in Mississippi, and they knew everybody. So they see you, you stick out. They know you must be coming from the bad boys' home down the road, and that's what they portrayed us out to be: is these bad kids that need straightening up. That's how they made us feel too. They broke us down. But I honestly can say this: before drill instructor not got there, that Bethel was, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. If I could have went home from that and never had met William Knott, I think honestly, to be honest with you, I think I probably wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you about it right now. Because was it bad? Yeah, but at that point, I had been through so much trauma that that was normal for me. That wasn't really that bad. But when William Knott got there, everything drastically changed.
To a different level of abuse
Oh my
and
God.
yeah. And
Mm,
William Knott actually came from Detroit, right? He was part of the Crips gang. He was a gang member,
That's what he told us.
the tattoo.
Yeah, that's what he told us that he was.
When he first got there, did Herman Fountain introduce him to you guys, or did he just show up?
All right, tell
This
you
is how
about
it's going to
that.
be.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Everyone else we've talked to has said they were already there before, or they were there either before or after he came. But you're the first person we've talked to that was there before.
The day he came,
during-
I was there.
Yeah.
He,
Wow.
okay, so my parents started, my older brother, Danny, he had started getting into trouble at home. So they sent him there with me.
Oh.
So when they sent him there, it was this place cost money for you to be there, like real money. You know what I'm saying? I don't know exactly how much it was, but it was up there. And for them, they were paying for both of us for a few months. And my parents, I had already been there for a little over a year at that point. And my parents wanted to bring me home for a trial run. Okay. So they agreed to it. So since they had my brother there, they're still getting the money from him. So they're like, yeah, maybe he's okay or whatever. Maybe he'll be all right. So I went home and it was maybe it had to have been it couldn't have been more than a month that I was home. And I again I fell in with the wrong crowd when I wasn't listening to my parents like they wanted me to. So I went right back. So they sent me back. So I get back there, and about 2 or 3 weeks after I got back was the introduction of William Knott. And we were at the barn, and one of the things that they had us do would be, I don't like saying this word, but they would put us on the in crew.
And they would say it.
Yeah, they would say it. And I wasn't used to that either, coming from living in Detroit and Ohio. White people just don't say that word. You know what I mean? And so I was on that because I got in trouble when I come back. And we were wire brushing all the paint and rust off of a dump truck. And that's one of the things they would have us do. We would strip down these old machinery or equipment, and they would repaint it and then sell it. You know what I mean? Or resell it. And so I'm back there with this wire brush, hating life. But honestly, when I was going back, I really didn't. I didn't care. That's why I know it wasn't that bad before, because I knew what I was going into this time. And my brother was there, and I'm like, okay, I got this time. I'm gonna go in, and I'm just gonna be like the ones that they like, the boys that they like, and I'll do just fine. I'll get on their good side, and I'll make the best of it. Yeah, 2 weeks later, here comes Brother Fountain, Bubba, and Josh, and William Knott. And I'm looking at this little short black guy, and he looks so ridiculous because he had this military uniform on with his big hat thing on, and I'm like, what is this? You know what I mean? And I'm laughing it off. So he came over, and Brother Fountain introduced him to us. He was taking us because there's different crews working on the property all over the place. So he was taking around to each crew and introducing them. Immediately after he got done introducing them, he said, Nathan, come here. I'm like, come here, boy. I was like, oh no, what is he calling my name for? What's going on? And immediately, not didn't even let Brother Fountain even finish it. He said, so I heard you came back, huh? And I was like, yes, sir. I came back or whatever. And he's, don't talk to me no more. Don't say a word to me. He's start duck walking back and forth from the barracks to me until you drop. He said, until you drop. So the rest of the day, instead of me working, I had to do duck walks back and forth from him to the barracks. And he's yelling, screaming at me, throwing stuff at me. Every time I'd fall down, he'd come and pick me up and drop me back down. I'm like, okay, this is something, this is new. And that night I went and slept And when I got up in the morning, I went to jump off my rack and my legs just gave out. It was like jello. I couldn't even, I fell straight to the floor. I couldn't even move my legs. It just took me forever just to even be able to move my legs at that point. And then we have to go run 7.5 miles now, is what he's telling us at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm like, oh, waking us up, slamming trash cans with an axe handle, which I'll get into that later. But yeah, he would be slamming an axe handle on his trash can. He would be coming through, waking us up and screaming at everybody, yelling at everybody. You had 5 minutes to get everything in your affairs in order and get outside and line up to run 7.5 miles. I'm like, oh my God, my legs, like, I'm not going to make it. There's no way. That's all I kept thinking. Like, how am I going to run 7.5 miles after I can't even move my legs?
Yeah.
So the whole time, I'm lagging behind because I had to walk. Nobody else had to do that but me the day before. And so here I am lagging behind and him screaming and yelling at me through the whole process of the 7.5 miles. And we finally get back and he said, you got 10 minutes. Everything was a few minutes that you had to get prepared for. So you got 10 minutes to get ready to line up outside to go to breakfast. So as soon as we get down to breakfast, he waited until I got up there to get my tray. And he said, you sit down. You don't get breakfast today.
Oh my gosh. It's like he made an example of you.
Right.
And what we
Yeah.
know now about William Knott, where he is just a total poser, where he's approaching you guys like he's some drill instructor or that
Yeah.
he's a big thing in the Marines, but he's actually not.
Right.
Very low man.
Which I just found out recently too. So I don't, and it's pretty crazy to me that after you guys told me that, because the things that he did and he told us was, and it just makes me not like him even more, because here you are doing this stuff to me, to us, to all of us that you don't even know. Okay, it's one thing if you've been through that before and you know the limits and you know what people, but you don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah, he's just using things that he's heard other people say
Mhm.
and talk about their time in the military, and then he's just using it to abuse you, to
Exactly.
treat, and just he's just a big fat liar. He's just so
Yeah.
awful. I
Yeah. So I'm always curious when I'm hearing these stories, they're like, how many guys are in one bunkhouse together?
Okay, so there's a downstairs, upstairs, and downstairs. Each floor would hold, what was it, 8? I think it was like 24 or maybe 30 or something bunks on each
Okay.
floor. So that's
Okay.
two
So
bunk beds.
yeah, okay. So then you're looking
Because
at
there's probably about
close to
maybe 20
close to
beds.
100.
Because or maybe there's like 10 to 15 beds on each side of the dorm.
Yeah. So you're looking at maybe 60 to 80 guys in a whole
Yeah.
building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you have one guy who's telling everybody what to do. Or did he have guys with
At
him?
first, it was just him. At first, and there was a guy there that was staff who actually had been a resident there and stayed all these years. He was old. He was in his 40s and he was still living in this room in the barracks around with all these boys. Yeah, and his name was Frank Despino. And after DI Knott got there, DI Knott moved into that room with him and pretty much butted him out. I mean, yeah, took over the place and drove him out. So Frank Despino ended up leaving, and then DI Knott was there by for a long time until he started the rank system. And then once you became a senior cadet, which is the highest you could be, then you were in charge of. He had two senior cadets and two sergeants on each floor. And basically,
Yeah.
that was who ran each floor after he developed ranking. And I'm one of the few ones that made it all the way to senior cadet, but it took me a long time to do it. But I did it. I went there when I was 13, and it took me till I was 17 before I got it. But yeah,
Essentially, the responsibilities of the senior cadets are to help keep the other guys in line, the lower ranking guys in line.
you run orientation.
Okay.
So I ran orientation on a lot of the boys that probably you'll be talking to. But I would say this, I went through a lot to get to that point. I didn't just give in and say, okay, I'm going to do it. I ran away again after DI Knott got there, Tried to get away one more time. Did you guys know Jason Stringer? Have you?
Yes, we're
Okay.
interviewing him as well. Yeah.
So yeah, I ran away with him and my brother Danny. We ran away and we actually made it for about 2 or 3 days on that. And yeah, we ran away in the middle of the night right after chow. We stayed back to clean the kitchen because my brother Danny worked with Miss Fallon in the kitchen. So he was in charge of making sure the kitchen and everything was cleaned up at night and everything was done. It's inspection list and he had to go through, so he had to stay back. He was always able to keep a couple guys back with him just in case he needed help cleaning it up, anything that needed cleaned up, and everybody else would go back to the norm. We stayed back. He had us stay back with him, and we had some food and got some food and everything in a bag. We took off out into the woods and we made it for about 2 or 3 days. And when us, they had a whole truck full of boys from there that were looking for us. They would drive around in the wooded areas and have the boys search the areas and then come back and report to them. And then they would go to the next, and that's how they would look for you. They would get like 4 or 5 of the boys that they felt like they could trust, and they'd take them out and they would have a search party, look for you.
Go through the woods and do the
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah. So they found us and they chased us down. They caught my brother right away. And then I heard them catch Stringer, but I didn't run. I knew better to run because they could hear me. So I just laid down and I covered myself up with sticks and leaves and everything, and they didn't find me. I could hear them literally walking right in front of me back and forth. They didn't ever see me. It was dark out. They couldn't see me. But they sat out there and they threatened my brother, yelling out into the woods for a good 45 minutes straight, threatening them, telling me what they're going to do to them. At one point, they even told me that I'm never going to see him again if I don't come out. So I came out, and as soon as I came out, they smushed me in between two of the guys. I don't even remember who it was now, but and the whole way back to the property, they were just punching me, slapping me, just were having their way with me, doing whatever they wanted to, because Brother Fountain wasn't gonna say nothing to him after we just ran away. That was the worst thing you could do, you know what I mean? And so we get back, we go up to the barracks, and drill instructor Knott had already had a plan for us because we were the first ones to run away with him there. So he had this big elaborate plan, and what they did was they took like orange spray paint and they went and cut down a fresh pine log tree, like a 6 foot log from a pine tree. And if you know anything about trees, when you cut pine, it's got that sap that comes out and leaks, like it's real sticky and it comes out, leaks out of it when you first cut it down. So we had to carry this. Now, my brother Danny, he slipped out of it because Miss Fountain needed him in the kitchen. And she basically told, "You're not having him. I don't care what you say. I don't care what he did. I need him down here," because she knew what was happening to us. I think basically she knew what was going on, and she had gotten close to him, being in the kitchen with him. So it was me and Stringer now that to carry around this 6 foot pine log, and it can't for 3 days, 72 hours, it touch the ground. You shower, when you eat, when we got switched, we had to hold it up on the table and lay it across our forearms while he beat us with sticks. He would go back and forth, switching us. And he would make us do sit-ups with it laying across our chest. We had to sleep with it, which was very uncomfortable. We had to lay on the floor and lay it across our midsection, sleep. When we showered, one person had to hold it until we got out, and then
My
another
gosh.
person had to hold it, and then we would go right back to holding it. And if it dropped, your 72 hours started over again.
Oh my gosh.
I hate
Yeah, that was crazy. And of course, we got switched pretty bad. Both of us did. We got beat pretty bad by the drill instructor. But I will say, after that happened, after we got through with our punishment and all that stuff, drill instructor took me under his wing because he said I was not just going to lay down and listen. I don't know if he respected that or what, but he took me up under his wing. And he put my bunk right next to his door. He gave me a job. You watch the phone. And anytime anybody's on the phone, I want you to sit and I want you to listen. And if they say anything that they're not supposed to be saying, if they're calling home and they're telling their family anything that, is alert, like a red flag alert, I'm supposed to go and tell them. So that was the first trust that they gave me. And then they started building me up from there. But again, I don't want to forget that they would drown us, literally. Like I remember I got drowned once in the pond and once in the pool because they would, in the pond had a deck that went out far on it. Have you ever heard of pogo sticks? It was, remember the gladiators? Remember back in the day, the show Gladiators on TV
Yeah.
with those sticks and helmets?
Yep.
That's what he would make us do out on this deck. And you would
Oh, wow.
fall into the water. There was a rope going up on this thing too that you could climb up. And he would make you climb that thing over and over that rope and fall back down into the water over and over. And if you tried to come out of the water before he was ready, he would kick you back in it. You weren't allowed to come out until he said you were allowed to come out. You had to tread water. Sometimes it would go on for hours at a time. And people would just get so tired and exhausted, they would quit treading water and fall into the water. And the other boys would have to get them out. Like they wouldn't even dive in to come get them.
Gosh.
And then in the swimming pool, this is another thing. He said he went to scuba school in the Navy. He was in the Marines, but he said they sent him to scuba school. And this is where he got the training of us treading
Wow.
water in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Like literally, I'm talking about hours and hours of treading water in a swimming pool. If you come up to the edge, he's kicked people right in their face, broke their nose just bleeding into the water, and still have to tread water. He would take a water hose and spray it in your faces while you were in the pool.
He's
And
truly just a horrific man that is
Yeah.
there to abuse you no matter. And
and this was
for you.
even if people did have to go through that in the military, this is grown adults and they're going through it for a very small portion of time. It
Yeah.
doesn't stop. There is no end to it. It was just every day. That's
Yeah.
what happened.
For torture, not necessarily
Yes.
like in the military. That's to train you for becoming a Navy SEAL in the BUDS program. It's not to torture people.
Right.
Correct.
Like Charles Kennedy said, it is a war crime. So they were committing war crimes against us. You know what I'm saying? It was insane. It was crazy.
And also fraud. Also fraud.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
not forget
absolutely.
about that too. Not only was William not a fraud, but Herman Fountain and the Bethel Boys Academy was a fraud because they were going
Absolutely.
around telling parents this is the kind of place that this is, and it was nothing like what they said it was going to be.
It was not. And it was instilled into our brains that if you told your parents anything and it got back to them, that was your ass. And
Awful. It's just to keep you silent so they can continue to.
Mhm.
It's not for helping you in any form of helping you heal from the stuff that you've been through that brought you to those places. Like it's truly
Right.
just
Right.
to allow them to continue to, I call that carefully controlled blindness, because they try to turn your parents' attention somewhere else and make it seem like you're the one who's, if they could say that you're lying about stuff, then their parents aren't going to believe you or whatever. But it's all just so they can continue to do bad things.
It is, and make money.
Yes, yeah, good point.
For profit, because it definitely was not a nonprofit. That was for profit. And
Yeah.
we would build
And
houses. I was
yeah,
on
so
the house
free
crew.
labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, free labor. And then they're also they're using that same model that Lester Roloff used, where they're going to these various churches, they're getting support from these churches. They're probably getting grants from the government as well, because they're nonprofit, whatever. And then they're getting parents to pay a tuition.
Outrageous
Literally
tuition. Yeah,
insane.
it is.
It's insane.
They just would keep, this is what they did. They broke you down until they felt like you were broke down enough in their eyes. And then they would slowly start building you back up. And that's exactly what they did with me. And by the time, they're right, you're right. They broke me down. I'm not ashamed to admit it. They did. They broke me all the way down to the point where I was like a robot. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm just, every single thing that they say, I'm just going to listen to them because I can't do this anymore. I can't take the beatings anymore. I can't take all this crap anymore. And once you get to a certain level, once you get to sergeant, you're in charge of doing like the PT and all that stuff on them. You don't have to do it anymore. You're the one doing it, what they were doing, what drill instructor showed us to do. Now you're in charge of doing that to them. You see what I'm saying? Now you don't have to do it anymore. That's one of the benefits of it. After you have done it for so long, you get so tired of doing it. Now you made it to this level and now you don't have to do it anymore. Now you're the one doing it to them. So basically they turned us into abusers ourselves. Exactly what they did.
But when you're in survival mode and you're like, I just want this to stop. And you're a child, essentially, right? You're a child. Even an adult would do whatever they had to do to get out of the situation of being abused. And if they had to become a senior cadet, just a child like you guys did, to get out of the daily abuse you guys were in, who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't do that? And so I know that a lot of the guys that we've talked to were in those positions and they have a lot of feelings of guilt and shame and all of that because then, like you said, then they teach you to become the abuser. But I think that you have to realize you were kids, right? And you were in survival mode and you were also being brainwashed. Like you said, took you down, they reduced you to nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so to put yourself in that mindset just to make it through each day, I don't think anybody has room to judge you or anybody else that was put in that position. And so I know a lot of the guys who were put in those positions, they have a rough time like accepting the fact that they did those things to some of the other guys and they have a hard time facing some of them. But to give yourself some grace to realize I was a young kid and I was being abused myself and I was just trying to survive. And it's a rough position to be in for sure.
And I
It's
think
very crazy.
It's not just that. Even if you say when I was a teenager, they created an environment where you were maneuvered, squeezed to become this way. So they had an opportunity for you to take care of yourself to a certain extent. And then what you consider, I'm going to level up in their program. But they created an environment where after you're broken down, that's really the best way forward. And I just feel like there's no shame in you guys taking that route because that was the environment they created. You on your own would never have said, hey, I choose. If that structure wasn't there, you would never say, hey, let's just go ahead and beat up on the other kids. You know what I mean? But that structure was created by these horrific people to make that happen. And that's something they learned right from the beginning from Lester Roloff. In fact, my mother, in charge of the girls program, used to be called Helpers Home. She's the one who created that system for the girls to inform and keep tabs on each other way back in the 70s. And I hate that she created this system and then everybody since then has manipulated it to form within their own program. And I'm sure she learned it from somewhere, but that was the first time it was put in place in the Helpers Home. And then what later became the Jubilee Girls. But that type of environment is what abusers use to another level of control. So that's how I grew up with, there's just something about the idea that if you want the mistreatment to stop, like you just have to do what they tell you. It's just a form of survival. And I hate that you went through that. But there's just no shame in it because that was just surviving life. You were just trying to make it through. And I love that you are still willing to talk about this, Nate, and that you're connected to all these amazing guys because they don't hold it against you, do they? It's so awesome.
And the ones I've talked to haven't. Yeah. So, yeah. I did. As a matter of fact, the guy I live with, I did his orientation and we're best friends and we're brothers. We got a bond that is like no other because of it. And there is good things that did come of it, but that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
because I went through all this. And then when I came home, I needed that. I needed to be tough because of what I went through after, too. So I used that toughness to fighting because you had to box in there. That was one of the things where they loved the boxing. They loved watching us box. They loved betting on us, and they would make it a night of it, just watching us beat the crap out of each other. And I did use that later in my life, but that still doesn't make it okay. But yeah, after the phone, he started giving me a little more. He entrusted me with his dogs, which I'm a dog lover. I love dogs. Like I've always have ever since I was a little kid. I love dogs. And he had these pit bulls that he fought. He would take them to dog fights in Mobile, Alabama, and other cities around Loosedale. And when he would bring them back, I was in charge of cleaning them up, cleaning the blood off of them. He taught me how to stitch them up if they were cut open. If they were too far gone, we had to kill them and bury them. And these are dogs that I took care of every day. So that was hard for me because I got these dogs that I'm going out and I'm interacting with every day, and nobody else is allowed around these dogs except for me. So I got this bond with these dogs, and now here I am having to fix them all up when they're whimpering and all,
Oh, so awful.
and just it was so bad. That was traumatic for me because I am having to clean these dogs up and even potentially have to kill them if they're too far gone.
And they would take the dogs to like dog fights as well, but on the dogs, correct?
Yes, he would take
Okay.
them. He would never brought me with him, but yeah, he would take them. He would tell me which ones he wanted, and I would go out and I would get them, and I'd get them ready for him, put them in his car. He had a car, and he had these little separation cage things that separated him. I'd put them in, and then he would take them, and sometimes he never even brought them back. Sometimes they didn't even ever make it back. He would just come back empty-handed or with just one dog or
I can't help but sit here and think about what in the actual hell was Herman Fountain doing when all of this stuff was going on? Was he going around trying to get support from other churches? Was he on the property in his house, not paying attention to what was going on,
oh,
and
he
just
knew
William
everything that
Knott
went
was
on in
just
that
doing
property.
whatever? He
Don't
was
let
what?
it. He knew everything that went on that property. He knew everything. Trust me, he knew every single thing that happened, and he knew it like that. Something could happen in the dorm, and it would be 5 minutes later he'd be walking through that door. Somebody would be called him. That was his big thing. He had to know every single thing that was going on. So don't try to say he didn't know. He knew. He knew what was going on because if he was one of them very controlling type people where he had to be in control, even though he was letting William Knott in charge of the dorm. He made it very clear to William Knott and everybody else that he was the one in charge. He had to be the top dog. You know what I'm saying? It's narcissistic behavior. You know what I'm saying?
All those things that William Knott was doing, Herman Fountain approved. Like he
Oh yeah,
putting the dog.
making men of us. That's what he was. They were making men of us.
What a terrible excuse to mistreat people, to say
Mhm.
it like that, because that's not, I'm sure you like everyone knows, even listeners know that's not how you, that's just the excuse they told themselves. And
Yeah, there was so much that went on there that I have forgot more than I remember. Somebody will tell me something and then I'll remember it and I'll just be like, you're right, I do remember it. It'll come back to me like, wow, I can't believe I didn't remember that. There's been so much that happened. And I was at Victory Ranch for about 6 months, and then I was at Bethel for about 3 years.
And at what point did you get out? Did you age out or did you, what happened
I
there?
went home when I was 17, and what had happened was is my brother had aged out. The day he turned 18 is when he went home. So he had went home like maybe I can't remember how long it was before I went home, but I was 17 at the time I went home. But my parents basically, I think, had just ran out of money. They had been paying these tuitions every month for two of us for a year and a half, and then me for 3 years. So I think their pockets were just getting low and they couldn't afford it anymore. So they called and told Brother Fountain that basically, hey, we got to bring him home whether he's ready or not.
Yeah.
So Brother Fountain called me out of the dorm one night, and him and Bubba and his son John, and they told me, basically they told me Brother Fountain offered me a job. He told me that my parents wouldn't have to pay anymore, and that if we had to, he could keep me there, and he could basically get custody of me.
Oh,
And it
wow.
would be just like that, as simple as that is what he said. You know what I mean? Simple
Oh,
as that. Even if my parents still wanted me to come home, there was a way around that too, is basically what he was telling me. And that he would pay me $300 a week, and I would have a room in the dorm, like drill instructor, not because at the time I went home, drill instructor was no longer there. He left. He went back to Detroit, and he was supposed to just go back to Detroit and come fly right back for the weekend. He ended up not coming back. Me and Brother Fountain and his son Josh had to go pick his car up from the airport,
I mean,
and they found cocaine in his trunk. I'm assuming it's cocaine because at the time I didn't know what that was, but they had pulled out these baggies with a white substance out of his trunk when we got it back, because
Coke or heroin. Yeah.
I was in charge of cleaning all the cars on the vehicle too. Like every once a week, I would go and detail the complete inside, wax them, everything, the whole nine. When I went to do that, I noticed that stuff in a bag in his trunk, and I went and told the fountain because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know whether I was supposed to throw it away or what. So after he found out they found that in his car, I think he didn't come back. And so when I left, Jones wasn't there. He wasn't there.
Wow.
And basically, I was in charge of the dorm because at that point, I was the highest senior cadet.
And what year would you say this is happening?
98 was when it was
98.
not.
Okay.
I went home and it was towards the end of 98.
I cannot believe that he was going to just pay you 300 a week. That's such,
Yeah,
Mhm.
$300 a week, room and board, of course, food, the best food, because the food was good there, though. I ain't gonna lie. Miss Fountain could cook. She definitely could cook. So the food there, everybody would tell you the food was good. But yeah, you weren't even when you were allowed to eat it, and when you were allowed to even had time to eat it because you had a time limit to even eat. So if you had time enough to eat it, it was good.
these are
Mhm.
arbitrary rules, you know, just are created to inflict form of torture and to break you down. And so you didn't accept you did not. Good
I
for you.
said, and he was so mad. He was furious. He
Wow.
was literally mad. He didn't even talk to me again. He didn't even say bye to me when I left. I've been there 3 years. And the day I left, his son John came to tell me to get my stuff around, and that he's going to take me to the Mobile airport. And my ticket was already there waiting for me. And I was like, Bubba, come up. Everybody come up except for Brother Fountain. He didn't come up. He didn't come up and say
Wow.
bye to me or nothing. He was that mad. He was furious. And when he was mad, he wasn't scared. He would let you know he was mad. Like he said, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, and that I'm going to do nothing but get in trouble. I'm going to do nothing but cause worse havoc on my life if I go home."
Hmm.
But I still didn't care. I had enough of this shit, and I'm going home. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And yeah. And another story I want to point out that I don't know. I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if he wants me to or not. But there was another boy in the home with me that was around the same age as me. And one day I was in charge of cleaning the cars. And in drill instructor's not car, in the back seat, they had pull down the red armrest that came out. And I detailed the entire car. He would inspect it. So I had to wipe every single thing down inside and out. So was cleaning the inside, and I pulled that thing down, and there was a piece of mail in there, and I noticed one of the boys' name on it, and it was from the United States Marine Corps recruiting. And I knew that this kid, he was 17, and he wanted to go to the Marines, and that's where his family, he didn't have nowhere to go home to. So he was trying to get into the Marines so that way when he turned 18, he could go to the military. And I went and gave him the mail.
Good.
I
Good
went
for
and gave it
you.
to him because I didn't think that was wrong. I didn't know why
Yeah.
it was there. I wasn't thinking that they were hiding mail from us. I didn't think that, which they were. Well, I didn't think that. And so when I gave it to him, of course, he went straight to Brother Fountain, and Brother Fountain already knew about it. They were hiding this, they've been hiding the mail from him.
My
From
gosh, it's so awful.
So I got, okay, as soon he called me into his room, and this is just like a little room, it's not big. And he had this axe handle that he kept behind his bed that he woke everybody up in the morning with, and he also beat us with it. He beat me with it numerous times. And so when I get in there, he reaches behind his bed, he grabs the axe handle, and I'm like in awe. What is going on? Because by this time, I'm a senior cadet. I'm trusted. I work by myself. I'm not on a crew anymore. I had it pretty much made in there at that point. So I'm thinking, what could I possibly have done? And he just starts beating me with this, beating me and beating me. His bed was there, and he would always set the phone on the bed.
Mhm.
So the phone, he had the ringer on silent. I don't know, something. So when he hit me a few times, I had fell back into the bed and it knocked the phone off the port. And this boy, there's a boy in there with me, and his mom was on the phone. And his mom heard everything. And this went on for about 10 minutes and hit me in my kneecaps, hit me in my legs, hit me in my elbows, and strangling me. He would get me in a headlock, strangling me, throwing me around this room like a rag doll. And she heard it all. And when he got done beating me or whatever, he picked the phone up and was like, hello. And it was his mom on the phone. And she said, first of all, she wanted to talk to her son like right now, which I don't blame her. So her son come in, which everybody in the dorm knew what was going on because, oh my God, Nate's in there again. I was a senior cadet. Everybody's, oh my God, why is he in there getting beat up and stuff? And
Yeah.
so he gets on the phone, and Drone Strucker Knot is like literally breathing down our necks and shaking his head basically and lipping to us, don't say nothing. And he grabbed the phone back from him after he gave it to him and was like, man, we were just horse playing. So he's basically giving us something to go off of.
Mhm.
And then he hands it back to her, and then he's just looking at him. So his name, I'm just gonna say it because I've talked to him about it. His name is Micah Denunzio. So I really want to, because I don't know what his situation is with his mother, but I just want to see what her reaction was to that because I never got to talk to her after that. But yeah, he was terrified because I'm sitting in here and the whole dorm could hear me screaming from this beating. And now his mom's on the phone. He's probably thinking, what did I do? Am I next? You know what I mean? Oh my God. And my brother was still there at this time working in the kitchen, a senior cadet working in the kitchen. He was in charge of the kitchen. So he heard about it. One of the boys had to go down there for something and told my brother, and my brother took off out of the kitchen running down to the dorm because he knew I was in trouble. They told him he was beating me. My brother ran in and pushed instructor Knot. He wasn't on me at this point. This is after the phone call was over, after everything. She made me get on the phone too. She talked to me, but of course, I was just horse playing. So what he wanted me to say, and I wasn't going to say anything
Right.
else, especially after I just got beat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at this point, drone instructor not having me downstairs. And at downstairs, they had a pool table. It was like for the corporals and up. Senior cadets and everything were supposed to be downstairs, except for me. I had to be the only senior cadet that had to stay upstairs. But yeah, so I'm sitting there leaning up against the pool table, and Brother Fountain and his son Bubba was there. Drone instructor Knot is just furious with me. He's yelling and screaming at me. Brother Fountain didn't really have much to say about it until my brother ran in. My brother ran in, charged Drone instructor Knot, trying to wrap him up, and then
Wow.
Drone instructor Knot picked him up. I gotta quit calling him now. I don't know why I'm doing that, but he picks him up, throws him on the pool table, and is punching him in his face right in front of Brother Fountain and Bubba. Nobody's
Wow.
saying anything. They're just standing there looking at the ground because at this point, I had developed a relationship with Bubba and Brother Fountain. I had been there for so long, and drill instructor not too, because I was basically his go-to. Anytime he needed something done, He taught me how to cut hair. So now I'm in charge of cutting hair. I cut everybody's hair. I did all these jobs that he was giving me, all like the responsible jobs, and he would give me multiple. So I got to take care of the dogs. I got to cut everybody's hair. I got to clean everybody's cars. I got to do all this stuff, but it's all by myself. I don't have to deal with crews. So I kind of liked it. It got me out of the way, and I could be by myself for a little while. So I was developed a relationship with these people, and here they are beating my brother up, beating me up.
Yeah, it sucks.
I wanted to see what Micah's mom did after that.
Yeah.
Or whatever happened, because I went home shortly after that. My brother went home, and then I went home right after that. You know what I mean? And I never really knew. I don't even remember if she pulled him out of there or not. You know what I mean? I don't remember. Yeah, I just wanted to say that because I wanted to see. I want to see what their reactions were or whatever, because that's, to me, that's always bugged me to this
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Always bugged me.
Yeah.
Did the one boy make it into the Marines?
He did. I
Oh,
got him on
good.
Facebook. He actually was in the Marines just till recently. Like he stayed in
Aw.
for years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Like
And,
you
Awesome.
had a hand
and
in.
you know what? Want to know what he said to me when I reached out to him? This has been a couple years ago, but he said, for him, though, if it wasn't for Bethel, he wouldn't have made it through what he in the Marines. That was his view on it. But
Yeah.
this is somebody who wanted to be in the military. Most of us didn't want to be in the military, and we didn't want anything to do with that. You know what I mean? Most of us, the
Yeah.
majority of us, did not want that to happen to us.
Yeah, you never signed up for
No,
in the military, even though
no,
as a kid you were
right.
forced into a military
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, what happened to me after Bethel was probably the worst of it all because I rebelled. Really didn't care then. And I was turning 18. Before I even turned 18, I already had a felony charge and they bound me over to an adult. I'm already on my way to adult prison at 17. Everything that happened after Bethel was probably worse than Bethel to me. Because of Bethel, I think is what made me that way. And I went to prison for felonious assault. I got into a fist fight at school. And me being in Bethel and having to fight like I had to fight in there, these kids in public schools, they weren't ready for that. Me and my brother Jason, both, brother Danny that was at Bethel, I got jumped up there by about 5 different kids. We went up to take care of it. The guy's jaw ended up getting broke. His eye socket was shattered. His cheekbone got broke, and they sent me to prison. So there I was starting my adult criminal life. And that was the only violent crime I've ever had. Everything else has been drug related since. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So, how
I've
long were
tried
you
to.
in prison? When you went to prison, how long were you there?
I've been to prison. I've got 4 different prison numbers, and I've been 6 times. I've been to prison 4 times and 2 parole violations, and I got a total of just under 15 years altogether.
Mhm.
Basically in and out. I can't remember exactly all of it, but in the last 20 some years, yeah, it's been 4. I got 4 different prison numbers, but drug trafficking, possessions, stuff like that ever
Mhm.
since then. And then I don't do that anymore. And I've been clean for 5 years now. I've been out of prison for 2 years. March 3rd will be 2 years. I've been out and I'm living a good life, man. I'm doing good. And I put all that stuff behind me and it's a good feeling, you know what I'm saying? To live like that for so many years because I used drugs to try to drown all this
Yeah.
pain that I was having. So the only thing that I could find that would do that was heroin. And I got addicted to it and I did it for 20 plus years. I was in and out of prison because of it. I was using, I was an everyday user and I didn't care. I didn't care whether I lived or died. My mom will tell you, I got out of jail. One time I went in for 6 months or something like that for a misdemeanor in the county jail. And I came home, and within 1 week's time, the ambulance had to get called 3 times for me and wake me up with Narcan. Now, I've been to the hospital 8 times total. I had to get Narcan administered, and that's not even counting the numerous times. I used to have a girlfriend that I was using with for about 3 years straight before I went back to prison this last time. And she'll tell you the only reason she stayed with me was to keep me alive.
Mm.
because I would die simply because I didn't care. I didn't care. I wanted to die. I was like, how could my life be like this ever since I was a kid? Over and over, every single time I got some hope or I thought things were good, it wasn't good. And I would think about all that stuff that happened to me. And the only thing that would make me stop feeling that was heroin,
Mhm.
drugs, any kind of drugs. I didn't care what it was. I would do it. And I
So
didn't
what was
care
your
if it
turning
killed me.
point? What would you say was your turning point where you
My
just finally were like, I'm not gonna live like this anymore. I'm gonna clean
it,
my life up.
it actually wasn't until I was still planning on going back to the streets. This time when I got out of prison, this last time, March of 23, I was planning on, I didn't have nowhere to go or nothing. I was just planning on hitting the streets and I would just sell drugs just so I could buy them to use them. You know what I mean? So that was my only plan I had. So I was still hadn't turning point didn't happen until really till I got here. I was in the halfway house for my last 6 months of my prison term and I was able to get a cell phone. I got Facebook, and the first person that hit me up was Dan. And I don't know if you remember me, but we were at Bethel together. And he's, man, how you been? And I started explaining to him, and my story that I was telling him clicked up a little bit with what happened to him after Bethel and stuff. So he was like, you know what, man, this is crazy, but I'm starting a rehab up here in Pennsylvania. I just got my paperwork back where I can do it, and I can do it under a nonprofit, this and that and other, and I started it. So it's not really anything yet, but I would love for you to come up here and help me with it and help me get it started. And it was right then and there that I actually felt hope, like a little bit of hope. Like
Well,
maybe I don't have to go back to the streets. And so he's, what's your release date? I told him I ended up getting in a little bit of trouble at the halfway house, and they sent me back for the remainder of my prison term. So I ended up going back to prison, and I was worried that I had lost contact with him. Now I didn't have my cell phone no more. I didn't have none of the stuff. I called my mom, and he had reached out to my mom and my sister and gave him his phone number. So I called him, and he's, man, the day you get out, I'm gonna be out in that parking lot, man. I'm gonna pick you up. And he did.
That's
He kept
awesome.
his word, and he's kept his word ever since. And he's been nothing but a brother to me. And he really helped me out of a bad situation I was in because I was headed right back for the streets. It was only a matter of time before I was either dead or back in jail again.
man, Nate, I'm gonna cry because I'm just so proud of you. Like I just think you're so awesome and strong, and to take the hell that you've lived through and then to find
Mm.
hope and good and light in it. And you had friends that reached out, but you were the one that made the choice to take a different path. And like I said, you just give me such hope that no matter what you've been through, even as a kid, that good things can happen and
Yeah.
that there are people who care, and that where the adults let you down as a kid,
Mm.
you are now that adult who is stable and good and doing good things, and you know the right from wrong, to be kind to other people. No, and I just think about the people that were adults again when you were, that should have helped you and they didn't. And I hate that for you.
Mhm.
And I'm just, like I said, I'm just so proud of you. And I wish I would just hug you right now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I just really want to say if you're a parent and you're looking to send your kid away, do your research, man. Don't just pick a place and send them because of what you read on the internet or what people have told you. Talk to some of the kids that have been there before. Talk to them because they're going to tell you. After they've come home and they've completed that program, talk to some of those kids and see what it's really like in there before you just send your kid to a place because there is real bad people in this world and they are inside of those places. I'm telling you. And they
Mhm.
hide in those places. They hide behind the church. They hide behind religion. They hide behind all this stuff. And really, they're just monsters. And they're using loopholes to try to hide their abuse, and they're just nasty people, man.
Yeah.
Man, you got to be careful, man, nowadays sending your kids away. And you should care enough about your kid to do that.
Just really appreciate you sharing your story with us. I know Susie and I both feel very honored that you would feel safe enough in this space to share your story and to I know that sometimes when you share your story, it does bring things up to the surface, and that's very difficult and hard. But you were brave enough to face that and to tell us those things. And I just really appreciate you, Nate. You are a very encouraging and inspiring person. And I know that you are a very positive individual at this point in your life. Maybe there was a time where you weren't, but you are now. You're always online cheering everyone on and supporting everybody, supporting us and supporting your Bethel brothers and sisters. And I just think that it's amazing, and you are amazing. And I'm with Susie. I wish I could give you a hug now too. We would just do a little group hug.
Yeah, the only thing I would have to say is if somebody else has a story like that, even if it doesn't help anybody else, it can help you. It can help you by just sharing it, by just manifesting it and speaking it out loud to other people.
Yeah.
I love that. And also, where can people find you on social media to maybe connect if they're a Bethel boy that hasn't been able to connect with anybody or maybe wants to specifically connect with you?
The main ones I got is Facebook, and it's under my name, Nathan Dunn, or TikTok, and that's under my real name too, Nathan Dunn. So either one of those, I'm on all the time. So Messenger, Facebook Messenger. Yeah, man. If somebody hears this and they was at Bethel, even if they weren't at Bethel with me, reach out to me, man. And there's a whole community of us out here that are very supportive, and we got your back. So if you're one of those people, hey, man, don't be scared to reach out to us because we ain't going to bite.
Healing is a process, a journey to be experienced, not just a destination.
You are not alone in this. It's okay to take your time, explore different perspectives, and find what resonates with you. Healing takes courage, and we believe in you.
Together, we can enjoy the ride.